All right, perfect. All right, hello everyone. My name is Riley Dickens, and I'm a senior consultant at Encryption Consulting. And I'm here with Blair Canavan from Thales. And today we'll be talking to you about PQC Readiness for 2024 and how and why procrastination can cause some problems. So, I'll start us off with just a little bit about Encryption Consulting, and just to let everyone know, this is live. So if you see any technical difficulties, anything like that, we'll be back pretty quickly. So no issues there. Just stick with us here. So I'll just touch really quickly. With Encryption Consulting, we're an established market leader in data protection consulting, and we've had some exponential growth since our start about 4 or 5 years ago. And we have a number of different Fortune 100 companies that we work with, including Thales. We're partnered with, as you can see. We just work a lot with advisory services and different infrastructure, HSM, integration and implementation, things like that. So that's Encryption Consulting. And Blair, if you want to take over here, you can, touch on your background and get us started.
Well, first of all, thanks, Riley, for having me. I know we've had a lot of great conversations leading up to this particular webinar. And as you described, Encryption Consulting, I don't think it spells it out any more clearly as to what you do. But here we are. We're talking about post-quantum. And people ask me all the time, friends, family, colleagues, what is this quantum thing that everyone hears about? It's quite remarkable that we're at this stage in this incredible new paradigm of computing. But it also has, as you know, the flip side of quantum is going to be something that we all have to deal with. And I think Encryption Consulting and Thales and many others in the ecosystem, we're going to talk about that today, are readying ourselves and our customers and our partners to undertake what could arguably be the biggest uplift in cryptographic history. Mm-hmm. It sounds a bit daunting, but this is the best part about our conversation today. We're going to leave you with comfort that you have ways to address this, and organizations posturing and providing at the same time a wonderful service offering. So I'm really excited about what Encryption Consulting is capable of doing, and we hope to enlighten a few people. I will set the stage that we're not going to talk about quantum entanglement and the physics of quantum computers today. The joke is that I know a little bit about it, but I am by no means a physicist, nor am I an engineer building these wonderful machines that have what I described as incredible capabilities over the next 5 to 10 to 15 years. But on the flip side, as we said, they can, in the wrong hands, they can render a lot of us in a very, very awkward position, to say the very least. So yes. Let's get started on this conversation and jump right in.
Perfect. All right.
As we said, this is live, so bear with us. We hope that the technical side of this works. As I described, my name is Blair Canavan. I'm based in Ottawa, Canada. I've been very fortunate to travel the globe and share and discuss a lot of discussion points surrounding post-quantum and particularly PQC readiness. For those who have been around the block a few times, or for those who are brand new to quantum computing or the effects of post-quantum cryptography, I think you'll all take away a few little tidbits that between Riley and myself, I think we're going to make this as much of a conversation as we possibly can today, Riley. So let's get going. Next slide, please.
Perfect.
We may flip through these fairly quickly, but let's get started with a joke. Let's lighten things up a little bit, and I hope that we can't hear the audience laughing or groaning. But a man calls quantum IT support and complains that his quantum computer isn't working. IT support response: have you tried turning it off and on at the same time? So, Riley, I know you and I talked about this. I have one other quantum computing joke, which is a qubit walks into 2 bars at the exact same time. And that's as good as these jokes are going to get today. So let's get going. So lighthearted gets us going. Let's talk about what the problem is. Is there a problem? You'll hear about that, and perhaps you know a lot about quantum computing or quantum cryptography. There's a hype curve associated with all net new technologies. Much like AI, we all assume that AI is taking over the world and none of us are going to need to work anymore. And it's going to render the entire planet obsolete in terms of the workforce. These are all things that the hype curve contributes to. And the same applies to quantum. There's some incredible achievements and value coming with what we call happy quantum. But on the post-quantum cryptography side, unfortunately, those new and completely new computing platforms, quantum computers, are going to be able to do things, not theoretically, but practically, that will take on and render existing cryptography, asymmetric public key cryptography, virtually obsolete in a matter of minutes. So we're going to talk a little bit about that just to kind of set the stage. And we're going to talk about how this ecosystem that we work within, and this is something Riley and I are quite excited about. This is not something that one company can do. This isn't like you pick up the phone and call Microsoft or IBM or Palo Alto or name your vendor of record here, AWS, Google, doesn't matter. All of those organizations are single-minded in working together to solve this issue because every single one of us is affected by this. Our customers, the actual solutions and products, and the partners that deliver them are all affected by this new paradigm. So Riley, I just want to make sure that when you and I converse back and forth, you keep me honest and we make sure that we get to the most important part is what can you do about it? So let's get going.
Perfect.
All right, let's get through the problem. And Riley, I might jump around a little bit and ask you a couple of questions, but for those who are not familiar with this, again, quantum computing concept, there's been people involved in this for a very, very long time. And hats off to Dr. Mosca, who I call a friend and I work with on a fairly regular basis in various post-quantum working groups. Imagine his life's work leading to 2024, where just a couple of weeks ago, we launched, or I should say NIST released, the biggest change in cryptographic algorithms in history, in human history. So all the years that he told people, it's coming, trust me, has led everybody to here we are in August of 2024, a milestone achievement for NIST and the world of computing, including Thales, who co-wrote one of the algorithms that is currently approved by NIST. But anyway, let's move forward and talk about why everything that's affected by computing, including the internet, is no longer secure as it relates to the new realm of quantum computing. So Riley, what we were talking about last week was, what is this thing, Shor's algorithm? And for those who don't have to or don't care to know about algorithms, just think about all the mathematics that you went through in high school and perhaps post-secondary, and you had to pay attention to what was an algorithm. What's interesting about this is that Peter Shor wrote something approximately 40 years ago. Did he anticipate that a quantum computer using that particular algorithm would actually crack RSA 2048, ECC, and any other sub or deprecated algorithms, DES, triple DES, SHA-1, and so on and so forth, RC4? No, this was not the intent. But the thing that everybody needs to understand is that there are two pieces of this. When we look at asymmetric or the public key side, this is something that quantum computing will have a direct impact on over the next few years. And please don't get us into this whole speculation. We believe the time frame is shorter than what we thought. Some say it's as early as 3 years. Some believe it's 10 years away. But the speculation is not the issue. It's the preparing for that. And it's no longer an if, it's a when. But that eventuality in terms of right to left thinking is, and this is where Dr. Mosca and everybody in that area of expertise has been explaining, is in order for you to get to that next level, you have a lot of work to do. You've got to swap out a lot of stuff, a lot of algorithms. It's similar. And Roddy, what were we talking about? It's like a ship at sea.
Exactly.
We can't stop these ships that are in transport, that are moving goods all over the world. The internet's the same thing. So physical or digital goods are moving. Thales is the underpinning of the entire SWIFT network. We don't just stop things moving back and forth, including financial transactions. So what we equate that to is that these ships at sea have rivets. So these rivets need to be replaced. They're no longer capable of restraining and containing the information. So what we're looking at is, do we then go on the outside of the ship and remove the rivets? Probably not when they're at sea. But we can't bring everything to dry dock. So we have to work internally and externally in some circumstances, but obviously from a use case point of view, external facing access control, external facing IPsec, external TLS, SSL, exchanges, all those things are affected. Let's go to the next slide. Oh, sorry, before we move actually. And Grover, we all know, and this is, I think maybe people will hate me for saying this, but I'm going to step out on a limb and say AES 256 is virtually quantum safe today. Right, Riley? We were talking about this.
Yeah.
Because why? Well, it's arguable that you need 5,000 error-free qubits to break RSA 2048 or ECC. This is theory. Maybe less, and there's different techniques that are being applied. There's also been 2 or 3 near misses where attempts have been made using other methodologies, inclusive of quantum computing. So this is, again, the factors that are at play here could render RSA and ECC obsolete. And when I say obsolete, crack it in minutes. If you told me it took an hour or a day or a week, I'd still take that, because the conventional computing side was thousands of years to break RSA, arguably, technically. Whereas AES on the symmetric side might need approximately 13 million error-free qubits. So I think we can feel a little more comfort that encryption capability methodology is in some effects quantum safe today. But we will talk about harvest now and decrypt later a little bit, and talk about what if you did have the key to actually decrypt that data at rest. I wonder how you would do that. Maybe if I just compromised an SSL session, a TLS connection, and I absolutely grabbed the payload, would I have the key inside there? These are things that come to mind that we have to undertake to understand the paradigm of quantum computing. Next slide. I won't go into too much detail on this. I mentioned Dr. Mosk already, but take a look at this. As at the bottom it says, don't wait, upgrade your encryption now. And the reason that we go right to that is it's already past the point of no return. We know that we have to uplift, upgrade, make changes to everything. And that includes what Thales builds and also what Thales consumes. The same goes for encryption consulting. Nobody's immune. We don't have a special key. Everybody's using publicly available, and it's all through NIST. It's all through various validation labs all over the world that are using these standards. But we now know that we must upgrade everything. There is no turning back. And we can debate it when it needs to be done. And again, the hype curve to some extent is working against some organizations that are struggling to get that buy-in or struggling to get executive understanding. We're here to tell you today that that is changing dramatically. And I think you and I, Riley, talked about it a year ago or 2 years ago. We've got lots of time. And we do understand that there are ransomware issues to deal with, and there are more important things to, and we know some of the most recent compromises across the board. The CrowdStrike incident, again, these are things that are day to day. But the absolute essence of your entire environment relies on encryption. All security relies on encryption. So next slide. So quickly, this has been around for a while, and that's why a lot of people get a little bit of, I've been hearing about quantum. It's just like Y2K. Let's not worry about it. It's going to come and go. No one's going to worry about it. This is entirely and completely different. This is not a prediction of, and we all know how Y2K really came and went. But in this particular case, we're already past that point, as I described. And if you click again, you'll notice that as we're moving into 2025, a lot of things are being put in place from a compliance mandate. And these new standards that were released on August 13th, it means that crystals, Kyber, dilithium, Sphinx are now approved, and they are now what would be considered standards for encryption, standards for asymmetric and public key. So what that means is all of us are embracing those, and we're doing something to embed, to support, and put those algorithms into our products, and providing solutions that are not a flip of the switch. You'll hear the term hybrid and hybrid certificates and things like that for public key infrastructure, for digital signing, for code signing, all those things. Absolutely, those are the right terms. That's what's happening right now. So next slide. And just click through again that both ANSI, BSI, the National Cyber Security Center, the Singapore authorities, all of us all over the world are consistent, and our message is clear. We're all in this together, and we know that we have to get there from here. And this particular area from the CNSA or National Security Agency, NSA, is that we know that software and firmware has to begin this transition. And Riley, I'm going to kind of ask you a couple things about that, but I think you guys have some ideas as to how we might be able to do that with encryption consulting services. So I'll let you maybe throw in a couple points here.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one of the biggest things is an assessment and an inventory of all your devices, your applications, your software. All of those different things are so vital to just beginning your journey. You need to know what cryptography algorithms you're using. You need to prioritize, what data needs to be protected first. If you have data being stored for a longer period of time that's sensitive, that should take priority over, anything else, because it's exactly like you said. It's a take now, decrypt later type of system. And, that's what a lot of attackers do. So if it's staying there for a while and it's a social security number, someone might take it and decrypt it later when quantum computers are more common.
Absolutely. And CNSA, I think, sets the bar really well. If you look at the next slide, this is establishing, and most people understand this by human nature, is, procrastination is not a plan. And saying I'm going to do something 10 years from now is also not a plan. That's procrastination just built in. So we're very matter of fact when we click on this one slide here, you'll get a yellow dotted line appearing. And back up, it should appear on there. We're missing the yellow dotted line technically, but you'll see 2025. Well, guess where we are? We're less than 3-4 months away from 2025, where the world is shifting, including Thales. Think about this. Every product that we make, and it could be something that, I don't know, is pushed into a rack as a network device, like our HSMs, or it's perhaps one of Thales's satellites that we push into space, or it's one of our high-speed encryptors, or any of the products that we make. Those are devices, those are our servers and network appliances that will last for a very long time. So we have to future-proof a lot of what we do, especially satellites, meaning that the software and the firmware that's embedded in those devices has to have secure telemetry, meaning that if someone were to compromise that digital signature or the actual connectivity between us communicating with that device, imagine what a stranded asset is. It's one thing to have a ship at sea where we can bring back to dry dock, but you don't just pull satellites out of space. So these are examples of many, whether it be operational technology or standards, cyber technology, where we're all affected by the same thing. So web browsers, so the CA or the CAB forum, all working on that in tandem. Niche equipment vendors that are using any type of cryptography, they might not even know what crypto is. Their developers certainly aren't crypto experts. So we're helping a lot of organizations understand that we can work with those companies and build out a strategy so that moving forward, the software development lifecycle is no longer, I need 10 cryptographers on board to fix this. No, we can do a lot of things at the same time while we're doing this uplift. And then, of course, all the networking equipment vendors, the Ciscos, the Broadcoms, the Palo Altos, you name it, all of those organizations are working to provide quantum safe technologies. And I can assure you, because I speak to them on a regular basis, that they understand the urgency and the priority of doing so. And here's an opportunity for you as you're evaluating technology vendors. Maybe you want to ask them, what's your post-quantum strategy? What is your implementation from a roadmap point of view? And then, of course, anything that's legacy. This is a great opportunity for us to talk about this. What some people call legacy, others call operational. And we learned this the hard way with some of the large enterprises when we assume that they can just flip switches and upgrade on the spot. It's not that simple. You can't just back something out and push something into the rack overnight. Sometimes it takes years for these transitions. Again, the same analogy of ships at sea. So we're going to refit a lot of what's existing out there, including a lot of what Thales produces today. Our Luna HSM firmware will be able to upgrade that without ripping the equipment out of the wall. We'll be able to upgrade our high-speed encryptors. We'll be able to provide quantum safe with our cipher trust, encryption, tokenization, and key management platform. So that's a real testament to how we can do things with what you already have. But at the same time, we're going to expect you, and this is maybe a good layup to what we expect you to do, is understand where everything is in your organization. So let's move forward, because I know we've got quite a few slides to get through. I mentioned the governing bodies. We talk about preparation, hybridization, and then ultimately getting to post-quantum readiness or full PQC. It's going to take years to get there, but we know the standards bodies are working on that. Next slide. This is what I described. It's not just us in a room all looking and staring into each other's eyes. This is us working worldwide with a lot of really important, really savvy organizations. Hats off to NIST for doing the legwork on getting these algorithms out the door. We should be very mindful that the world owes them a great debt of gratitude, because they have, and again, with a lot of input from a lot of vendors all over the planet, they are the ones driving this. And we appreciate that, because this consistency is adopted by organizations all over the world. Next slide. But let's get to starting. Where do we start? And I know you kind of teased us a little bit, Riley, with one of your comments about crypto inventory. Let's walk through some of these things. Let's get a plan together. Starting with, next slide, a deep breath. Don't panic. If you haven't got something from a plan-wise for PQC readiness already, don't panic. However, as I said earlier, procrastination is not a plan. Get started. And like everything else that we do, you know, you say, I got to clean out my garage. I got to get this thing done. I got to do that. Your refrigerator list, you've got to move PQC readiness up to the top, as close to the top as you can. As I said, mindful that you've got daily, you know, IT related issues to deal with, but do not underestimate the amount of effort that this is going to take. But you also need to go get the actual executive sponsorship and make your team understand that they have a fiduciary responsibility, they have a compliance responsibility that you can walk them through. And this is where companies like Wells Fargo and HSBC and Dell and many others are broadcasting why this is so essential to success, because we all have to work together. The other part is that seek external advice. This is where Encryption Consulting, you don't have to go it alone. You don't have to see how many staff you have on board that did their undergrad or their postgrad in cryptography. You may get lucky. You may have a few people in-house that are really savvy, really smart, but the world is available to you with the internet. And accessing just the two of us can access an entire ecosystem of partners. And we really do emphasize that connections to those organizations and real people matter. But you got to have a budget. You got to understand what your desired state is. And I mean that in bite-sized pieces. So get your project planning hat on, get your milestones, get your Gantt charts, get your spreadsheets going. But you're going to have to start off with something really essential. We're going to walk through a little bit of this about crypto discovery and how that ecosystem is going to help you once you have that discovery. Next slide. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, if anybody has any questions from the audience, please make sure you post those in there so that or pop those in there so that Riley and I can address that. So I mentioned the ecosystem. One of the benefits of working with a company the size of Thales, and maybe you don't know who we are, maybe you call us Thales or Thales or Thales, it doesn't matter. We're an organization that spans the globe. We're about 80,000 odd people now. And like I said, we build everything from passports to satellites to defense equipment to, as I mentioned, hardware security modules, cryptographic solutions for payment systems. We've got a lot of stuff. And why that matters is we've accumulated an incredibly strong ecosystem. And it's not just logos that say, hey, I like working with you and I like working with you, or we just like each other. No. This is a pre-vetted, very inclusive ecosystem of partners that is really embedding themselves into the post-quantum realm. That means you have a mixture here of technology vendors that do specifically quantum safe or post-quantum related technologies. You also have global systems integrators. You have companies like Encryption Consulting that have hands-on people that get physically involved in building out your infrastructure and working with you deliberately. And then as this is growing, if you see at the top right, we have what's called a verified solution. This means that those technologies, there is no skunkworks in here. There is no snake oil, wildly crazy new ideas here. Why? Because you can't afford to take that leap of faith on something. So we work with standards, we work with vetting, we work and test, and trust but verify everything. So let's move to the next slide, because this will really help people understand why. So as that vendor community is working together, one of the things you'll see or be asked, and Riley, we talked about a PQC migration plan. There is no menu, or should I say recipe for success. Not one will fit all. Depending on the size of your organization, the business line you're in, industry, et cetera, et cetera. But what we can tell you is from the top down, there has to be high-level executive appreciation. Like I'll again point out Wells Fargo, one of the world's largest banks. They have marked PQC readiness in their top 3 IT initiatives over the last 2 years and going forward. meaning it's that important. They know they have to get all this done. But what they understood very, very early on was they had to understand what they had. There was an assumption, a presumption that they had it all under control.
Right.
And unfortunately, as we all know, the spread of technology includes certificates, keys, secrets, ciphers, and you can't possibly, can you, understand where everything is? So one of the things, Riley, you and I talked about was a PQC risk assessment. Maybe you could walk through that first box there and explain that in some detail, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the value of that inventory.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, with the PQC risk assessment, it does a number of different things, and it starts off with identifying your quantum risk. So that's basically finding your vulnerabilities, where an attacker may attack from at first, and what data they might come after as well. And from there, you move into a lot of different levels where you assess your vulnerabilities and then prioritize what data needs to be migrated first. And then you actually go through those steps of migrating the data, isolating the assets that are being migrated, and then ensuring that you're future ready, and just preparing your environment by getting those NIST approved algorithms like we talked about in place everywhere you can in your organization.
Right. And that weak link, and we think about this was a kind of a daunting way to look at it, is imagine that someone says, well, what is cryptography? Or what? Well, that's the encryption. What's encryption? And you get into those with your friends and family, but you try and explain it as it's algorithms, it's technology that protects everything. Keys, you get it, you understand. Locks, yes, I get. Encryption, oh, it's jumbled so that I can't open it, read it. Exactly. But imagine that if all the keys now are potentially compromise points for the first time, because we've really set it and forget it in that way for many, many decades. Now, RSA 2048 and ECC, wherever it might be, is in line for compromise. The same thing applies to your crypto health, your crypto hygiene. So when you do that crypto inventory, you're going to find, for example, that you have keys in the wild, certificates completely all over the map, and under, as we jokingly say, under the desk, on a USB stick, in a person's personal computer. Why? Well, we know the spread is not limited because we have developers, we have people that have lines of business, they have to get things done. So often is the case, you'll sign up unwittingly and you'll have a certificate issued to you. You'll have a key issued to you. It's not just passwords we have to manage. So one of the things that we're finding really incredible about this exercise, working with companies like InfoSec Global, they have a product called AgileSec, and Sandbox AQ, and IBM's QSafe, and DigiCert, and KeyFactor, and even parts of Thales that can provide you information on your certificates and your keys. All of that contributes to visibility. So now that you have all that information, the ecosystem that I showed you previously can come in and provide remediation, meaning what about maintaining all of a certificate lifecycle management platform? Absolutely. You've got the Venafi, the AppViewX, the key factors, the guarantors. There's all sorts of wonderful companies out there that do a really good job on that. And key management, I don't know, maybe Thales has something. Of course we do. It's called CipherTrust. We're the world's largest key management platform vendor. And for those who don't know, we're the entire back end to WebEx and things like that, because we understand that key management for all of your, data at rest, all of your sessions, all those things matter. We got to manage those keys. So machine identities also put in Luna, PKI keys put in Luna, all of the signing keys put in Luna. So we're repatriating, we're pulling stuff together, and we're putting them in, just like you clean out your garage, you're putting them in the correct bins up on the shelf so you can point to it and know where everything is at all times. So the transition to this is going to be a bit daunting, but again, it's an opportunity for you to get your house in order. Lastly, we're just going to say that all this leads to, of course, nirvana, and that is PQC readiness. But we understand that you'll hear terms like crypto agility and things like that. Crypto agility is not just swapping in and out the algorithms. Crypto agility is the people, the process, the technology. It's understanding that development changes from this point going forward, that they don't pick, per se, an algorithm. They'll say encrypt or sign, and then we can start to abstract out the development shop and apply policy and pull that crypto agile or that platform to apply, whether it's going to be AES on the symmetric side, or whether it's going to be dilithium, or whether it's going to be a hybrid certificate using both. We can do a lot of cool things at the time when we're going through this this entire metamorphosis of change within the organization. Next slide. So this is where I hand the baton over to you, Riley, and I am excited for you because I know what you guys are capable of, and what you've been preaching for years has come to fruition, and that is you got to do this right. Half-assing this is not a strategy. I know you understand very well, so I really do appreciate what you're going to say here. So I'm going to hand it back to you, and we'll rally back in a few minutes.
Perfect. Thank you, Blair. Yes, so digging a little bit more into the PQC assessment and the process and everything like that, one of the first things that we do at Encryption Consulting is take a look at what type of adopter you are, or what your kind of PQC state is currently. And one of the ways we do that is going through the flow chart you'll see here. So you'll see you start at the top and it'll ask specific questions. And as you go down, it defines your state, your role, your persona, however you want to refer to it in the PQC world. And these first three are focused more on providing things to others. So this is providing cryptography infrastructure, providing protocols like the NIST does, things like that. And these three different types of states are defined as cryptography experts. So your job as a cryptography expert is, yes, you do need to become quantum ready, but mainly your job is recommendations for others. So like we talked about, those FIPS algorithms that are being released, they would fall into that first category. And their job is recommending PQC ready strategies to others. Now, moving through the flow chart here, these next four are more of a focus on data and critical infrastructure. And what these do is they see, do you have confidential data? Do you have personal data? And do they have a long confidentiality lifespan? Basically, is your data stored for a long period of time, and things like that. And going along with that is the critical infrastructure, which is things like hospitals, government infrastructure, things like that. They all fall into these four categories. And these categories are extremely important because these four fall under the urgent adopter group. And that, as you can guess, is one of the most important groups where you should be getting PQC ready, honestly, yesterday. You have very critical infrastructure you deal with. It's exactly like Blair said. You can't go in and stop everything just to replace this. It has to be piece by piece. You should have a migration plan in place. And, with all your critical infrastructure or your critical data, you need to prioritize what comes first. So these four, like I said, are called urgent adopters. And then finally, at the very end, you have just your regular adopters. And, some people may say, well, as a regular adopter, it's less important that I get PQC ready now. But just like Blair said, it's very important, especially with these new NIST algorithms, to be ready as soon as possible. It's not as vital as, say, a hospital or the government, but it is still important to begin this journey as soon as you can. Now, moving past the personas, I'll go a little bit into the PQC assessment, and we'll start with just the importance of it. We've gone back and forth today about how important it is and why it's important. And really, it's just identifying your vulnerabilities. You get a good idea of your data, how sensitive is it? How long do you have it? And you can get a good crypto inventory out of this as well. So at a minimum, you get a whole assessment of your environment that you can use for the future as well. So it's not just getting ready for now, it's that future readiness. Now, some of the risk factors we also look at a lot with the PQC assessment are these different attack surfaces that attackers can come from. And that's where those vulnerabilities come in, where you do something like you set up a risk model and you evaluate how your environment would stand up to a specific kind of attack from a certain attack vector. And that's a lot of what the PQC assessment does. You're finding those vulnerabilities, you're looking at your systems. Every computer, every piece of hardware is not built the same. So just like we were talking about, you can't have a one tool fixes all. You have to work with each individual one determine what its issues are, and replace where you can. So just working through all of that, along with dependencies on third parties. A number of us, if not every organization watching now, has some type of dependency on a third party. I mean, we all do. There's tools, there's services, anything like that is all provided by third parties. So it's not only making sure you're quantum ready, but also making sure those dependencies are quantum ready, because you don't want just another vulnerability for attackers to come in through, that being the third-party tool. Now, actually looking at the PQC assessment, it's all pretty straightforward on what you get. Some of the important points are, like we've mentioned multiple times, that inventory of cryptographic assets and data, that really gives you a guide of, this is where we're prioritizing things. This is all the data we have, the algorithms they're using, how keys are produced, how they're managed. It's just so important to have this, not only for PQC readiness, but for just general security. Some companies like to do, we get attacked and then we fix things. But it's so much better to be ready ahead of time and have this inventory and immediately know, oh, these, algorithms are becoming deprecated now. Let's go ahead, and we already have our list. We just go in and change them. So it makes things a lot simpler with that crypto inventory. And then, just like I mentioned, having that risk modeling and evaluation is a great way to see how your systems would stand up against an attack. You build that risk model, you test out, an attack from a penetration tester or something like that, and you can really evaluate how you stand up before and then do another one afterwards. And you really get a great idea of, what a change that has made.
I think that's an incredibly important point to pause on for a moment, Riley, is this is not a one and done, to your point. And I've often heard, and anybody who's been involved in asset management, regardless of hardware, software, or otherwise, has found the same thing to be true, is things change. And how do you know that you've made an effect by looking once and presuming and assuming that you've swapped it out, that you've stopped doing things like, keys and software. I know the dreaded conversation for all people in our craft is, why would you leave something in a database? Why would you leave something in the clear? So I think that you have nailed it by saying that we know that we're going to start with a baseline, and then we're going to continue to monitor the progress and sometimes the lack of progress on migrating off of old crypto to new, but also the practice model in terms of how do I make that part of my next stage of software development lifecycle management? How do I ensure that when people start building next new applications, externally facing especially, that they have those tenets of security built in? So I applaud you in making sure that this whole idea of a cryptographic inventory is absolutely essential. And Thales understands that and works with those wonderful vendors that I mentioned earlier to provide that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And then on the outcomes of a PQC assessment, it really, it's a step process. You start off with your basic readiness or a traditional security posture. That's just going in. Most people tend to have that traditional security posture. But as we move through the process, you find those vulnerabilities, you clear them, you replace hardware, and you just get to that optimal state of quantum resilience, which is what everybody should want and everybody should have. Now, going back to our crypto inventory, this is really a focus on, it's not just hardware, it's not just software, it's not just your inventory. It includes things like third-party dependencies as well. And, it's really focusing, you'll see most of these mention keys or keys produced or key location. And that key inventory, as well as just the application and operating system hardware inventory, it's all crucial to having this crypto inventory. You need to know when things will be deprecated. You need to know what systems might be going out of service and things like that. So you're not using old software, old firmware. You run into a lot of organizations in our line of work that are using 10-year-old HSMs, and we say, well, why don't you just upgrade the firmware and software or get a new one? So
that's a great point. I've had this conversation with friends in the business, and it's, what we're not really good at is planned obsolescence.
Yeah.
Even as we all just sit here, we know that our vehicles have got a bit of planned obsolescence built in, and certainly if you've got a mobile phone, you know darn well that that's programmed in. But I jokingly say this because it goes to the point earlier where I said that legacy equipment works. It's operational. Sometimes if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But it's the silent killer. It's not knowing that these things are points of compromise now. So I applaud you again. This is a really good testament to making sure that you take stock of what you've got. This is a really good opportunity here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So just going through a few migration strategy recommendations that we have for you, this isn't a detailed plan or strategy that you should follow word for word and you'll be good to go. This is just general strategies, general recommendations, how we tend to outline a migration strategy for someone. So of course, there's that beginning process, doing the assessment, finding your cryptographic algorithms and what needs to be replaced, and then prioritizing that is always the first step in a PQC assessment. And then moving from there is, something that may seem obvious, but that oftentimes is not done, is selecting a manager to be in charge of it, making sure they have the resources they need. And that includes not only, budget money-wise, but budget manpower-wise. I mean, you don't want to go in and not have enough people to get the work done in the right amount of time. You don't want to be 10 years behind just because you only had one person working on it for 10 years, things like that. Now, the technical planning is, where you're actually making your plan. You're planning out, this is what I'm prioritizing. This is the data we need to protect first. And these are the algorithms we need to replace immediately. And then we actually get to the replacements. So it starts with cryptography replacement. It moves into hardware replacement. And, a big part of that is asset isolation. We like to talk about that a lot because when you're migrating an asset from one piece of cryptography to another, you want to make sure that data is still safe during that migration phase. It's not going to be one day. It's not going to be 2 minutes. It's going to take a while, and you still want to ensure that that is secure, even though you're in the process of migrating. And then, of course, like we talked about, test at the beginning, in the middle, at the end, continually on past this project. Always important to use risk modeling and just testing in general for your post-quantum readiness. Now, one last thing I'll touch on is how we at Encryption Consulting can help. We do a lot of work, like I mentioned earlier, with advisory services, PQC assessments, or creating a migration strategy for you and actually implementing that strategy. We work with a lot of partners, especially Thales. I mean, I've worked hand in hand with Thales for my entire career here. We just, we work on a lot of things together. And our goal is really just to make sure everything is seamless, the transition is seamless, and that you have all the support and the future-proofness that you need at your organization. And I will hand this back over to Blair, and we can finish out.
Yeah, I'm going to fly through this for the sake of making sure we get to the questions, Riley, but thanks. I love everything that you had to say because we've been in simpatico about this for quite some time. And it's just great to see that this is being rationalized down to doable, reasonable, pragmatic action plans. So good for you. So let's click through this, what we mean again by the solution partners. We can't reiterate enough, work with your technology partners, work with your vendors that supply you, support you, claim to do, first line of support, things like that. Let's hold them accountable. And when I say hold them accountable, it means that they understand that you have a challenge ahead. This is where, again, they may reach out to Encryption Consulting as well, and they may work with other GSIs like the IBMs, Deloittes, Accentures, Kyndryls, and so on. We're all building PQC readiness practices, just like they're building something for AI. They've all got post-quantum transition plans available for you to consider. And the most important thing out of all this is have a conversation. Start the conversation. Get a meeting. And that's why we're so anxious to do follow-up, because we know from my experience that we get a lot of phone calls post-webinar about, we know we need to start this. Let's go to the next slide, because I really do, we're challenged for time here. I won't reiterate too much here, but the point of all this was we are building and have built hardware for a long time. In fact, my roots, pun intended, go back to Luna in its infancy. In fact, there were 10 of us here in Ottawa that started this company that built Luna in 1996, and here we are in 2024. It's obvious these are essential, fundamental boxes required. Most people don't even know what an HSM is, but this is testament to where we now know that we have to have a cryptographic center of excellence within your organization. So we've provided, much like we did with PKCS 11 back in the early days, so that our organizations knew what it was to interface with an HSM. Now we're saying to them, those HSMs, again, as I said earlier, are the places where you repatriate your keys, the fundamentals of your TLS, of your SSL, of your public key infrastructure, your code signing keys, your machine identity keys, your keys for encryption, all come from this. So the quantum resilience is going to come from us working with all that ecosystem of vendors. So next slide. Our partnerships are essential here, and one of the key partners is another company called Quantum Origin that builds what's called a QRNG source. They are doing what's called redefining randomness. Let's go back. If you click back, it might stop hype jumping around there. But think about your existing Lunas, and what that means is that we can consume the next generation of QRNG or RNG, quantum RNG, from companies like Quantinuum. So we'll just quickly go. So as you can see there, so this starter kit provides that capability with our partner Quantum Origin, and we can post call here, we can share information about that. Next slide. Perfect. We have not only a post-quantum starter kit for our HSMs, but also our high-speed encryptors. Never has there been a more opportune time to look at high-speed encryption. Why? Because it's the alternative to IPsec that, again, if you're looking at any of your network vendors, the Ciscos, the Palos, the Fortinets, all of them rely on IPsec. IPsec already is a huge overhead in terms of performance on those boxes. Imagine adding another layer, which is PQC, which is going to be, from a performance point of view, at least for the next few years, horrible. And it's an overhead that bigger keys, and there's just a session management that's going to just take even more resources. So right now, high-speed encryptors are already quantum safe. They already support quantum RNG from multiple sources, including Quantinuum and IDQ. And so you can provide that as an alternative. So think of a pharmacy situation where you have multiple points of connection. You can have 100%, or I should say 100% throughput or 0% latency using these types of devices. So that was just a pitch on that in terms of getting involved with starter kits. Next slide. Let's get to the takeaways. As I mentioned, we've got an entire portfolio of products, but just so you know, we want to make sure we lean into this. We're the first company in the world to receive FIPS 140-3 level 3. That's very important so that you have the trust and verification from NIST and the cryptographic module validation programs that we adhere to and have been working on since I've been in this business since 1996. And we continue to make sure that that is the absolute lowest bar that you need to look for. So that applies to all of our products, validations. And of course, we have our Cipher Trust platform. For those who may know it as formerly Vormetric, think about all your encryption tokenization for data, as well as your key management platform. This is an enterprise grade, largely deployed across multiple, many hundreds of thousands of endpoints and databases and so on and so forth. But think about us as the go-to for all encryption for that. And again, they're all PQC safe because, as you may not know, even though we're using AES to protect the data at rest, all of the upfront handshaking using anything from TLS or what have you is RSA based. So we've upgraded that to be post-quantum safe. So we're already quantum safe on our Cipher Trust platform. Next slide. Again, thank you to our entire ecosystem, our encryption consulting partners. I see one of the questions from our friend Pascal was, I see bunches of IP PQC providers, and I'm going to scroll down to what his question was, but hang on a second. Let's see if we can move this down. But I don't see a lot of PQC assessment methodology. I think he was a little early before you were able to describe that, Riley. So I think, Pascal, you and Riley need to talk. Mm-hmm. Pascal, I know you, and I know that you've got tremendous capabilities, and looking forward to working with you. Let's see, next slide here. 37 is, so let's make sure you understand that it's not just us. It's a big ecosystem. We rely on those vendors. We rely on those personnel that you trust and vet. Do a comparison. There's nothing wrong with that. Check and balance. Audits. We don't even have time to go through a 45-minute discussion about different types of audits, including ISO, if you want to really get into the weeds. But one thing we are starting to see is we're starting to see in RFPs and RFIs and so on that they are mandating that post-quantum be an element of your response. In other words, I'm going to buy your gear, but I need to understand how you hold up to the post-quantum era that's upon us. And that's really important. The audit side is we're going to see audits that are going to be something as simple as you are no longer allowed to run any APIs, any type of runtime applications, any type of applications externally or internally that are running old crypto. Because of what we've just discussed today, this is an opportunity for auditors to come in and say, we're not giving you the pass, and we might fine you, and we might actually tell you to cease operations, that it can get that kind of that greasy very, very quickly. And so we hope that it doesn't come to that, but we're very aware of the auditors in this realm. And lastly, but not leastly, communicate. The more you communicate, the more you share, the more you articulate this in a spreadsheet, in a project management plan, get your Microsoft project skills going again. There are lots of ways to do this, but we know that with encryption consulting and various companies in here, they will walk you and hold your hand all the way through this crawl, walk, run methodology.
Exactly.
So I think, Riley, we've got a lot of stuff that we can leave behind. Most importantly is call us. Let us know. Send us a note. We're on LinkedIn. We're happy to have a conversation. And let's get to the questions, because I think we're running out of time here, and this might stop us before we get going. Let me go to the top here and see. Is the deck available to download? Yes. As a part of Bright Talk, you can absolutely get this slideware. It's available when you simply type in Bright Talk space Thales or Bright Talk space Encryption Consulting. You'll get us, all three names. What do you do with all your outdated certificates, for example? I'll leave that one for you, Riley. What do you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Usually what we do, or what we recommend, is clearing out the old ones. If they need to be renewed, have a list of ones that need to be renewed, but most of the time they don't need to be. And you just basically clear out that database, clear out all your revoked and failed certificates and expired certificates. And then from there, your databases are clear and you don't have to worry about those certificates coming back.
Now, this one I know is a bit IP related, but there is secrets in this sauce, and I'm not suggesting, but the question is there a detailed PQC migration plan that can be sent to third-party suppliers for completion? Riley, I'll let you answer that. I know what I would say to that answer, but go ahead.
What I would say is there's not a one plan fits all or anything like that. My recommendation, it would be the same as what you would ask your own company, what you would do an assessment for your own organization would be my thought, is you ask the exact same questions to the suppliers, or you work with one of us, you work with an outside consultant. We help with the actual asking the questions to your organization, and then we pose the same to the third-party organizations.
Sounds good. I think one of the most important things to realize that there are going to be organizations that are going to be posturing themselves as the end-all be-all and have all the everything you possibly could imagine. It's still in a state of flux. We don't have 10 years of experience here moving companies to PQC readiness, but what we are seeing is a rally that I've never seen in my history, in my experience. As I mentioned, some of the largest companies in the world, the IBMs and the Accentures and so on, they are absolutely committed to this. Companies like Kyndryl, and the list goes on and on and on. I think it's testament that everybody wants to get in on this for two reasons. One is they know it's a long-term plan that they can help you with. And two, they know that it's going to take a lot of heavy lifting. We don't want to, again, diminish how much effort is going to be required for this. But if you get started now, get a plan. Riley can help you get started. And Thales will be there every step of the way to work with you should you need any advice. And maybe even simply a one conversation may solve a lot of problems that you otherwise didn't know. So
exactly.
I think we're down to the very last slide. I'll click click it, and that should be our thank you slide. So,
Yeah.
Riley?
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining today. You know, it was a great conversation. I think we answered a lot of questions, and I think hopefully some of you walk away really wanting to get into the PQC journey. So thank you, Blair. You know, we really appreciate your insights into everything as usual. And I look forward to the next talk we have.
Well, thank you, Riley, for having me, and stay tuned and keep drop back into Bright Talk. And like we said, there's a lot of content up there from a lot of vendors about post-quantum. Take advantage of it. Use the free training. Grab your lunch in the lunchroom and you know, put your headphones on and watch a few of these things. I think you'll find that you'll be illuminated. So again, thank you for having me, and I look forward to working with you, Riley. And any questions, we look forward to talking to any of the people that attended today. So
thank you as well, Blair. All right. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Bye, Riley. Take care, everybody.